Hello, welcome to toddfun.com, and what we're going to do today is we're going to change our own car tire. What that means is we have a standard passenger car tire. This is a 15-inch rim, and it's bad, and we went to a discount tire store. We purchased for 50 bucks out the door, no extra fees, no install, no nothing. We'll put the rubber on ourselves, we'll balance it ourselves. I'm going to show you how to do that with some gear from Harbor Freight. This is a tire changer from Harbor Freight. We're going to show you how to use it. What I like to do is get one 4x8 sheet of 3/4 inch plywood, cut it in half, and then screw it together. That gives you a base to stand on so this thing can't go nowhere. Then you take some carriage bolts, you mark where the 4 holes are in the base of this tool, and you put those carriage bolts up and you bolt it to this double thick plywood. So this is the base of the 2 layers of 3/4 inch plywood. I got a mark where the base of the tire changer goes, and these are just the bolts I put on top of to hold the tire changer in place when I'm using it. Now underneath here there's carriage bolts, and there's a washer and a nut. Now those go on and stay on, they never come off. These come off just to put the tire changer on and off. These washers and nuts stay on forever. And it sandwiches it together. And we'll take a side view of this. You can see it's a pretty hefty piece of plywood. These are the carriage bolts. I sunk them, by the way. I chiseled out so that you wouldn't have round carriage bolts spinning on the cement or wherever you have this. If you put it out on the ground, it doesn't matter. But if you're on cement, you want these carriage bolts countersunk a little bit. But they all stay like that. Just don't put this someplace where it can get wet. Keep it out of the rain, and it'll last. I think I've had this for 10 years, maybe more already. This is a standard tire changing kit that you can get from Harbor Freight. They run about 50-60 bucks. And after we're done mounting the new tire, we're going to show you how to balance your tire, because it's no good having a new tire, and if it's not balanced, you'll just get tossed all over the road. So we're going to show that too. Now that this is bolted to something solid, the weight of your body will hold it in place. It's pretty easy to use. I don't recommend this for big trucks unless you're a big guy. But for passenger cars, it's a very easy to do thing if you follow the procedure. So let's start with breaking the bead. What that means is we have to get the old rubber to release from the rim. Now, a lot of times your tire is flat at this point, but in this case, we're just putting new rubber on, so we're going to have to get the air out. So we'll get a special tool, which you can get at any auto parts store, that takes out the valve stem. Yeah, so this is a valve stem removing tool. It just has a little slice, and we'll use that to take out the valve.
There you go.
Okay, it just sticks in there, and it takes out the valve, and it'll blow air all over the place. So you just break it loose, take it out, don't let it launch on you. It'll blow it out. Valve that we took out that holds the air in, it's got a seat, and normally the way they work is when they get depressed, that lets the air in and out. That automatically seals when that button's not pressed. A lot of times you'll put new ones on, but hey, we're doing our own work here, so it looks like it's in good shape, so we'll reuse it. The tire is now empty of air, we can break the seal. Now this is a tool you can get at any auto parts store. It's for working with lead weights on tires. These are the old styles. These are the old style weights. They're not for the fancy mag aluminums and all those other ones. These are weights for steel. So they are different types of weights. You do have to worry about that. There's a little hole on this side, and this have a little beak. And you get that in there and you grab it like that. Once you get a grip on it like that, you just tilt forward and it'll pop that right off. Whoops, just about got it. And so that weight is now off, and we can crimp it back on right where it came if we need it there. Good job. Okay, so now we're going to break the bead because we got the weights off, we're ready to go. And this is just a device for breaking the bead. It's got like a pan on the bottom. It fits right behind the steel rim. I don't recommend doing any of this if you have real expensive rims because it could scratch and damage them. But for steel rims, this is what you want to do if you can do it your own. I got this set, there's 3 settings on here. I got it on the farthest out setting because this is a small rim. It's not a big truck tire, it's just a small passenger car tire. And the object is, now that we've got the air out, we're going to push down on this lever with this bar that comes with this tire changing kit. It's bolted to this plywood, so if you kind of stand on the plywood, brace it in there, get it just behind the steel rim, you work it down in there a little bit, and then just lever down, and it will just push that bead right off. Okay. Sounded like it gave up and peeled off that time. So now you just work around, you got the bead broke, just make sure it's off and in the center area where it won't be tight on the rim anymore. Now we flip it over and repeat that on the other side. So now we're pretty much done with the bead breaker. We can just put that out of the way. Next I take about a cup of warm water. It doesn't have to be warm, but I usually start with warm. And I mix in about 4 to 6 tablespoons of Dawn dish soap. And that's going to help, when you mix that up, it will make kind of a slimy slurry that will make getting the rubber off easier. So putting the small side up, the thin side of the rim up, which in this case is, and it probably normally is, probably always will be right side up. The outside of the tire facing up will probably be pretty normal. So we got this bar going through the lug nut. We want to get it fairly centered just to make it easy on us. We put the star down. That's going to hold this rim in the center. So we do want to center it a little bit. And this will do motorcycle tires and all the way up to big truck tires. It's very versatile. Got a lot of adjustments. This goes past that. And you don't want this moving around on you, so you want to stick this in here. This bar comes with it. And you start turning, standing on the board so it doesn't turn on you. And you don't want to bend your rim, but you want to make sure you got it tight enough to where you know that rim's not going to try and turn on you. But like I said, not to the point where you damage the rim. So now this rim is already damaged from a curb strike, so that is going to complicate a little bit, but it was holding air fine and we're just going to live with it. It doesn't seem like it's damaged in any other direction here, so that should be fine. Just so you know that that is going to complicate taking the tire off a little bit on this one. Okay? So I'm going to make sure that I do have lots of that Dawn dish soap slurry in here because it's not going to want to come off if it's not slick. Okay, now we want to get one side off and then the other side. And what's kind of paramount is that the bead is in the center of the rim where it's narrow. Because if you look at the side of a rim, it's narrow. There's a hollow area in the center and then it's raised on the edges. Okay, so this is just another rim that we have laying around. And you'll notice there's a channel in the middle and then there's raised parts. We want to get the rubber off this smaller side. And in order to do that, we broke the bead and got it down into this channel. You can see this channel. And if the beads sit down, if the rims of this rubber sit down in here, we can then work up one edge at a time, giving us a little play inside here. If you have the rubber rim, the bead of the rim, or the bead of the tire up here, you won't be able to get enough stretch to get the tire on and off. That's what this channel is helping you with. Now this tool that comes with the tire changer has a couple ends. This is the end you use the most. This is the end you use to kind of put it on. This is for taking it off. Now, you actually want to keep your body weight on the plywood so this whole mechanism can't spin, provided you don't want to bolt this thing right to your floor, which some people do. This way you can put the plywood up and put it away and audio away, and you don't have this or bolts sticking out of your floor. So we get underneath an edge and we pop it up, and that starts it. I do like to keep a couple of really large screwdrivers handy, just so that it doesn't fall back in easy. And then I'm using this to pry with, so I can pull on this, and this screwdriver will keep that one from going back in. And now I'm just sort of using this center shaft as a lever to pull around. And then you want to lift it up and use that channel that's in there to your advantage. Get it in that channel so that if you don't put it in that channel, then it's going to be hard to get the second part off. And we repeat that process by getting this back in there and then just pulling it. Once again, you could use a screwdriver if you want to, and then that's off. Okay, now there's going to be a lot of dirt and crud where that bead needs to sit with the new tire, and of course you already put a lot of soap in there and water, so it's going to clean up pretty good. And you want to clean this inside good. If your valve stem is bad or leaking, now's the time to change that too, but this one's good. Okay, I mixed up some more warm water and Dawn dish soap, and I'm going to just re-lubricate these edges because we are going to have to put new rubber on. So you want to make sure you have whatever side you want to be your outside based on your tread or based on the printing. So we're going to want this one on like this. Of course we want to take off our new thing. And $50 worth of rubber, no extra fees. That's how we're going to do this. So you kind of get it started by just pushing it down, and then you get it going one way, and then you want to get it in that channel. Make sure it's in the channel on this bottom side. And it can be a bit of a fight, but now this is where you want to get this guy started. And it's actually not the best time to use this one, but it'll help you a little bit.
Actually, see what you have. There you go.
Now we want to get this guy to lever this in a little bit. So we'll just push this in. And you kind of got to keep that in that center channel while you lever your new rubber on. It can be a bit of a wrestle, but there we go. And the more of this you can put on these beads, the better this is going to work for you. Now we've got to kind of repeat that. Keep it in that channel, but on one side you got to get it started. And this part kind of helps because this is where you grab it with that edge, and if you lock in with your legs, then this will peel that tire on as you spin it. We want to get this down into that channel if we can to give us more stretch. Yeah, it's in the channel. We're good. And that's what's good about having this bolted to a piece of plywood, is because it can't move while you're standing on that plywood. Okay. The next thing is we want to push it down so we know we got a good seal on the back side. And what we'll do is we're going to hook up air to this, and we'll lift a little bit, and it will pop and make a seal. Now, you're not going to have much luck filling this with air unless you have a high volume air compressor. I have a 30-gallon tank, and I got it set at about 95 psi. And I have the valve stem out, and you have to have what's called a normally open tire fill. What that means is you don't have to depress. There's no nozzle to depress to fill. You'd never get one of these to fill with air and seat without taking out the valve, the Schrader valve, and without having a normally open fill valve. And we just clip it on, and when we hook up our air compressor, it'll just flow, a fast rate of flow, and fill this quickly and pop this bead on. Once we get that on, we'll top off the air. And it'll lock on and start filling this thing. And if you give it a little jerk, it'll start popping. Keep your fingers away from the beads though. It's got a little bit more right here. There we go. Okay, now we got air in there because we use the air pressure to produce a perfect seal. So you want to make sure that you have a good tight seal on both top and bottom of your rim, and let the air out now. It doesn't matter. Okay, so now the air's come out, so it'll be easy to put in our valve stem. Like I say, a lot of people will put a new one in, but we're doing this on the cheap. Otherwise we'd pay someone to do all this hard work. Don't over tighten these, just so they feel like the rubber in the valve, in the Schrader valve, has seated. Now we top it off with 32 pounds of pressure. Okay, 30 pounds, we're good to go. Yeah, and if you got soapy water, why not check your bead? If you see any bubbles, you got a rusty bead, a rusty rim, and you got leaking. You don't need a lot, just enough to suds it up. We'll check the other side, make sure we don't see any leaks around the stem. If there's any leaks that get bubbles, and we're clear. We'll check the other side. Okay, so the tire's on. We just got to get it off here. That's what the bar is for. So now we got to put this away and get out the tire balancer, because a tire that's not balanced is not going to do any good. And believe it or not, we can do a better job than they can do with the machines. It just takes time. It's how they did it in the old days. It's how I learned it. It still works. Okay, now we got to balance this this tire, this passenger car tire. This is a balancer from Harbor Freight as well. It's got a bubble in the middle that tells us when the tire is balanced. So you can come in and take a look. If this bubble isn't in that center red ring, your tire is not balanced. And we're going to understand how that works in a minute. You have to put weights on. So you either get a weight set from Napa like I got. This is for steel rims and alloy rims. The steel rims are more traditional. It's usually what I work with. They're kind of rounded profiles. And then the alloys, they're sort of a square profile. And they can go on the inside or the outside of your rim. There's also adhesive weights. I guess if you're not doing this as often as I do, you can just go to Napa and buy the specific weights you think you might need. But having a kit makes it easy to balance the tire as you go. The rim wants to sit on this, and it has to push this down, and it centers up the rim in this cone. And so as this pushes down, it wants to center. And that way you know you're dealing with a centered tire that's being balanced. Now, I put a little bit of motor oil on this rim to allow that slippage. I also wipe some motor oil on this cone to allow that slippage, and I put some motor oil on these shafts so that it goes up and down easy. If you don't do that, this thing will bind up and you won't be centered anyway. Okay, make sure that your tire balancer is on solid ground, because you can't do this if you're not on like a slab, and make sure that your bubble's already level. And so to do that, there's a red ring, and you want that bubble absolutely dead center in that red ring. And there's 3 adjustment screws. You can just tweak them ever so slightly to get that bubble to center up. And when you get it centered up, even if you spin this, that bubble should always come back to center. And what that's pivoting on is a very sharp little tip here. Don't let this tip get dull. Be careful with this mechanism. In fact, I wouldn't even store this on this. I would actually store this separately and keep this protected with something, because you don't want that tip to get damaged or it's just not going to work right. And you settle on really gentle and make sure that you don't have it off inside, and you'll know, because then when you get it centered, it won't move around. It'll spin nice and easy, and the bubble will line right straight up for you every time. That's your starting point. Okay, the object, now that we've oiled up this real good and we got this centered real nice, if we look at our bubble, oh, I'm going to have to zoom in on this a little bit. It's just a little bit too far. It needs a little bit of weight over there. When I say over there, I mean a little bit of weight over there. And when Andrew puts a little weight there, go ahead and just put it there just so we see the bubble. And it straightens it up. Well, I gotta get the camera right now. It straightens up the bubble dead on. And that makes sense because the original weight was right here and we'd be moving it over to there, which is about right. And so it's not so much that you'd have to split the weight and put some on the other side and some on this side. It's just a small amount of weight to center it up. We're just going to do that and call it good. We don't have to split the weights. So go ahead and tap that on. Normally you'd want to take the tire off this and then put the weight on, but so that you don't end up pounding on your needle balance, but a little bit isn't going to hurt it much. And we're perfectly centered. That tire's nicely balanced. It'll run as true as if you'd had it done with a multi-$1,000 instrument. Well, that's it. The tire's balanced. 50 bucks. We bought the rubber. We told them we don't want to pay any other fees. We put the tire on, an hour of our time, balanced, we're good to go. We stick it on the car. Can you get better than that? It's cheap. Do I recommend doing it? Well, if you're doing big truck tires, you're going to fight, but little passenger cars, easy peasy. Thanks for joining. Bye. You hit stop?
Yeah, I thought you were done. Yeah, sorry, you're good, go.
Okay, we got a blooper, I guess.
Yeah,
the camera guy turns off mid-sentence.
Mid sign off, yeah, my bad.